Hi, this is Abhisar Bagastrawala speaking for the project Relationship Development in the SIG on-the-go crowdsourcing for the quarter fall 2019. At a high level, on-the-go crowdsourcing is about how to leverage people's existing routines to perform various system-level tasks. One example of this is a peer-to-peer food delivery model, where participants deliver food to each other on their routes. What separates on-the-go from other models is that we really try to reduce inconvenience for all the participants and have it really be on the go and on their existing route. My project is about, now that we have the system working, what does it mean for the participants to be interacting with each other? And what does it mean for their relationship? And how can the system help build relationships? And how can maybe the relationships that we build help the system function better? So to help structure my talk, I'm going to be following this guideline. So I'll first be giving you a review of some things that I did throughout this quarter, talking about the motivation for why this project is important, talking about scoping my user class, the need finding, and then talking about the core realization from this quarter that's going to impact the work that I do next quarter, and then the next steps. This quarter, I started out with no experience with iOS, so I spent a lot of time learning iOS technologies and learning the existing system that was built within iOS for the on-the-go delivery application. I also worked on one design outcome and made it specific and measurable. I also conducted 3 need-finding studies and made one need-finding plan to move forward. So, while thinking about relationships, if we analyze how students currently build relationships, we'll notice that this happens traditionally in classes, dorms, and clubs. And what's common among these interactions is there is incremental relationship building. It doesn't happen all at once. It happens through small interactions that happen over time. And there is a motivation to interact with each other. The obstacles of staying connected and meeting new people outside of these structures and even within these structures, is that people don't have time. And it's difficult to align short-term actions with long-term goals. So maybe you want to meet new people, but you're very busy each day. And you also need the right circumstances where you feel comfortable and able to talk to someone. So the reason this problem makes for, the reason on-the-go crowdsourcing makes for a good solution for these problems is that it does have this incremental relationship building through the different tasks that users perform with each other. You're actually meeting in the physical real world, and you're helping each other, especially in the example of peer-to-peer delivery. And we're addressing the issue of people don't have time because you're leveraging these systems around people's existing routines. We're helping them scaffold meeting people through incremental tasks, so they don't have to think about forming this relationship all at once. You just think about completing the delivery, and maybe your relationship is building at the same time. And you don't need the right circumstances because, we're providing the right circumstances by motivating interpersonal one-on-one interaction through these deliveries. So I first started out my project by trying to scope my user class. And I did that by identifying the various degrees of friendship, starting out with strangers, where there is no friendship. Acquaintances where you're not a stranger, but you're not really friends. You've maybe interacted a few times with each other. And then casual friends and close friends. And I decided to focus on strangers and acquaintances because I thought any design solution that I want to start out with and test, it would be easy to test moving from strangers, trying to help make strangers acquaintances. It would be easier to measure as a first step than making, let's say, casual friends close friends. Because I just thought the measures in those situations would be harder to determine, and it would be less clear to know if our design actually worked. I also tried to scope strangers even further, and I did that by categorizing into 3 classes. Total strangers who don't know anything about each other and have never seen each other before. Familiar strangers who see each other often, but haven't ever interacted with each other, and one interaction strangers. So maybe you've helped someone, you've bought a textbook from someone over free and for sale at Northwestern, or maybe you completed a delivery for someone in the on-the-go crowdsourcing system. Those would all fall under one interaction strangers. And within familiar strangers and one interaction strangers, I even wanted to scope it further to make my design problem easier, because if I wanted to start out with solving at least one problem and then move on to the harder one. And so I focused on people who are already friends of friends, had a shared identity or interest, and people who frequent a shared workspace. Because we know from relationship development literature that it's easier to form relationships in these groups of people than others. So when going into need finding, for the first iteration, my goal was to learn what stops familiar strangers with a shared identity and who were friends of friends from starting a conversation. And my setup was that I conducted interviews with various people, and my findings were that many times the effort and risk of the conversation is greater than the reward. And what I mean by that is whatever you think you're going to gain from that conversation isn't worth the mental effort of thinking about what you're going to say, and maybe the judgment or fear of failure that might come if the conversation doesn't go as planned. I also learned that people look for a commonality or shared connection, which gives something to talk about, and that context determines whether someone starts a conversation. So maybe in a certain situation, people have time and they're willing to start that conversation, whereas at other times, it doesn't feel like the right moment and they're maybe too busy. I also learned that based on personality of people, they want different things from the conversation. Maybe someone wants to just have small talk and someone else wants to have a more meaningful conversation. And so essentially I learned that there was actually a lot of complexity to relationship development that I hadn't realized going into my study. And I didn't have very tangible things for next steps. So in my iteration 2, I realized I wanted to focus on the same goal, but in the OTG delivery context, because I thought that would make my study more specific and help me learn what about this context where there is a reason to meet, and what are the obstacles and goals within these systems that users have while conversing with each other. And I actually revised this even further because I realized that before thinking about what obstacles there are from stopping people from conversing, I didn't even know what exactly is the exact relationship people will have with each other after they have actually interacted and shared one delivery with each other. And so I thought my first goal should be to actually learn that. And then the second goal should be to actually learn what stops them from further developing that relationship. And so I spent a lot of time developing a robust plan on how to a setup that actually would accomplish these goals, and an interview guide that would help support that setup. But my core realization was that there's already a lot of existing literature on relationship development, and the goal that I was trying to gain from need finding was to learn about the impact of a single transactional interaction on relationship development. However, by doing this thorough study of this subject, it would actually take me maybe a whole year to gain the level of depth that literature out there had already gained that level of depth. And I just had to read and look for how exactly these relationships form over time and what it means for two people to connect for the first time. And so I thought I was sort of reinventing the wheel by having this as my goal for my need finding study. And the second more important realization was I wanted to design my next need finding study such that after the need finding, whatever learnings I get, I would, with those learnings, be able to now design a perfect system. But I realized my need finding, the goal, the way my need finding was set up, it still didn't let me accomplish that, because the things I was trying to learn from my need finding weren't right. Because even if I gained the relationship development learnings that I was seeking, I would not be able to design my next characteristic, because I would have no knowledge of how optimizing for relationship development. So actually trying to, like, let's say I figured out that this one characteristic is the best way to make people build relationships. I would have no idea even after that how trying to connect people or trying to optimize these relationships and what impact this would have on the fact that deliveries and on the go should remain extremely frictionless and have minimal inconvenience. And if I just ask people, for example, to start having a conversation, that maybe takes away from the whole point of on-the-go crowdsourcing, which is it's meant to be really low effort. And so these 2 points together made me think that before jumping into actually conducting the need finding study, I needed to do more work around thinking about what exactly my outcomes were. So, for example, while thinking about these trade-offs, when we're deciding which two people to match, so let's say they're already, for example, in matching two people who are close friends and would like a reason to reunite, the system might make both these friends walk an extra block, and wait 5 minutes for each other instead of connecting both with other participants whose availabilities match more perfectly. And so this example I gave here is one example in which maybe connecting these close friends was good for relationship development, but it actually impacted the quality that the on-the-go service was providing in terms of reducing inconvenience. And so for next steps, the new direction that I hope to pursue next quarter is how can we design a system that can reason about social goals in on-the-go systems and intelligently balance social goals along with other goals of delivery, such as we still want to maximize the number of deliveries that are happening and ensure that each delivery is low effort.